Today's panelists are Dale Cuomo from Cuomo Comfort Systems, Nathan Horton, One Click Heating and Cooling, Jamie Hutsemple, Cur Controls, Joe Fiander, Conroy HVAC, Lahey Glass, and Atlantic Locksmith, and Kent Steves from Greenfoot Energy. And our moderator for this panel is Drew Tozer from Foundry Heat Pumps. I ask you to kindly put your hands together to welcome them to this panel.
They're on.
Test.
Hello. Hi. So, how's everyone doing? My name is Drew Tozer. I run a HVAC company, heat pump installer near Toronto called Foundry Heat Pumps. And the reason that I am here is mostly because I published a book called Feel Good Homes, which is a guide for homeowners. It's essentially a easy to read, easy to understand, layman's term information about how to find the right heat pump to make a comfortable, healthy, sustainable home. So this conversation is mostly, it is about the success stories from contractors. So what contractors are doing to find success with heat pumps. I'm not an HVAC contractor, so I feel like a bit of an imposter up here. But I'm very happy to be sharing the stage with these five gentlemen. I joined HVAC for climate reasons, and I think that it is important. It's so important that we accelerate electrification and accelerate heat pump adoption, but we need to do it in a way that helps contractors and also works for homeowners. So we need to solve specific problems for homeowners. I'm also aware that this is the last panel before cocktail hour, so we are the only panel standing between you and your drinks. So I promise to try to make this the fastest 60 minutes that I can. I won't go into backgrounds too much. I think that that's going to come up in the questions and in the stories that come up. But I just want to start with trust. So building trust and credibility with homeowners. So Jamie, I'm going to start with you. I just wanted to start with you because you're in a bit of a unique role where I think we have 4 contractors and you, a distributor. And I think that's a very interesting place to be, both because you talk to contractors all the time and you also hear the complaints from homeowners when they skip over that contractor and complain to you instead. So I guess my question for you is just, what's the biggest difference that you see between sort of thriving contractors and struggling contractors for heat pump installations?
Yeah, it's a tough question sitting up here with some contractors that are customers. No, these are all good. These are all good ones. Really, for the ones that struggle, it kind of all starts in one spot, I think, and that is the belief that for the homeowner, it's only about price. I find the contractors that only quote the cheapest, least expensive solution really miss out, and then it's almost like it starts a chain of events for them that leads to bad results for them. So they only quote the cheapest solution. So right off the bat, they lose some homeowners who are actually wanting a solution and to talk to someone that will be like a consultant or expert for them. Number 2, those contractors tend not to do a great job because they're not consulting the homeowner and explaining to them possible solutions. They don't really go into detail about how a heat pump works. So in Atlantic Canada, we have a lot of oil heat, and oil heat works differently than a heat pump. People that aren't familiar with heat pumps, they want to turn it off, they want to turn it on, they're cold, so they turn it up to 26. They're hot, they turn it down to 18. That's not how a heat pump works. So when they start doing that and don't get the results that they want, that's calls back to that contractor that was already working on low margins. Now they're having to deal with callbacks that they don't want to do because that they're not getting paid for that time. So it's like that chain just keeps going. And then I find with those contractors, because they're working on lower margins, they're not charging for all their time, they also then don't take time to train themselves or to make sure that their employees are trained. So now you get more callbacks because they didn't do enough training on the brands. And I find with those contractors that sell the least expensive solution and they're not really consulting anybody, they also will install anything. So if you're a contractor and you're dealing with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different heat pump brands and trying to help a homeowner, you're not going to be an expert on them all, and those little nuances you're going to miss, and it's going to lead to unhappy homeowners. The ones that are thriving, I truly believe the difference is they come in, they're a consultant, they're an expert, and they're not a salesperson, they're just a solution provider. So they listen to the homeowner and they give them the options. They don't assume. You can't tell by the size of a home how sophisticated a system they're going to want. You don't know if they're going to use Wi-Fi, if they're going to want a multi, if they're going to want, you don't know that. So you can't assume. You have to listen, talk, and explain, and be that consultant. And I find with those contractors, they're charging for their consulting activities. So they're not working on as low as margins. They do a really good job explaining, this is how a heat pump works. This is how it's different than an oil furnace or an oil boiler. These are the things that you need to do. So they're getting less callbacks. And I find those contractors too, because they value being the consultant and being the expert, they invest in training for their employees. They invest in training for themselves. So when a training is made available, they do it, so their employees become better at their job. And also happier because they're at a place where they're being trained and they're growing as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. That's sort of just the race to the bottom that contractors are constantly fighting with. And it's sort of this, there's a truism in sales that people don't buy what you want to sell. You have to sell what they want to buy. And so it's more of a holistic approach about, like, what are we talking about here? Like, what are we actually trying to solve? What pain is worth solving for you? And I think that that's a natural spot to just bring in Kent with Greenfoot, just because they do have that more house as a system, solutions-oriented approach that's trying to solve real problems with homeowner, but sort of including HVAC, but beyond HVAC as well.
Yeah, certainly with Greenfoot's approach to the holistic approach of the house, looking at the complete envelope, it comes with challenges. There's no question. Homeowners, they'll call in for a heat pump quote. Our highly trained staff that come to these houses have spent many, many hours learning the whole house as a system, understanding everything from the R value of the attic to the walls in the basement, to the heating system, to the duct design, to the ventilation system, to the hot water needs, and the whole entire house. So when they're coming into these homes, without overwhelming the homeowner, they're looking at the need, number one, for the reason of the call, and that be a heat pump in many cases. But by the time they're done, they're educating that homeowner on all the needs throughout the house. Now, they may not purchase that insulation system at that time, but they know maybe in 6 months or a year down the road that Greenfoot presented them with some information so that they would be able to reach back out to Greenfoot at a later date and be able to be looked after on that.
Yeah, and Joe, earlier today you were talking to me about sort of the things that you wish homeowners knew, just about how much of a treat it is when you go into a homeowner and they're not starting from zero. They already know what a heat pump is and what some options are, and maybe just enough to be dangerous. So I'd love to hear what that process looks like, what you wish more homeowners knew, and how you can get them up to speed.
So I'll answer that in a second, but first I just want to touch on the biggest frustration we have, and the same as my colleagues up here, would be what I call trunk slammers. One individual that goes to a home, puts a heat pump in. I know in Truro and Pictou County there's all kinds of them. I'm sure there is in the city here too. But like my sales guy, Dale, who's very good at his job, he'll come to me and say, well, without getting into names, the guy over in Tadwagush took us out again today. I said, well, Dale, do you want me to take your company car away, your expense account? All he's worried about is his overhead today is what am I going to buy at Tim Hortons and how much am I going to spend on lunch? So I don't want to focus on those individuals. We tell our customers all the time we're not the cheapest, and I'll be the first to sit up here and say that. However, we're still in business because of our people, because we have excellent employees, excellent technicians, and we pride ourselves in doing great work. We have customers calling us and asking us to come meet with them and sit down and go through their home heating solutions. I admire Greenfoot because they do the whole envelope, but we do get customers calling us, especially in Pictou County and Truro area, that want us to come sit down, and they actually know what they're talking about, and they actually know what they want, which is so great to deal with those individuals. And then we look after them, and there's one thing about us, as Jamie touched on, we always go back. And as Nathan touched on this morning, and he's bang on, our biggest problem we have with these individuals, the one-ofs, they always go in and undersize the home, and then they sell them a cheaper unit, which we could too. We had a customer a couple of weeks ago that was priced at 12, and they actually needed a 24, which is like double the price. And the individual, the customer, really couldn't get their head around that, but they did in the end. So it's nice to be able to have customers that know what they want.
That type of homeowner, when they make it to you, is that usually because they bought the wrong thing from the wrong contractor and now they're coming to you to get the right thing from the right contractor? Like, and would you ever fix those systems, or is it almost always the case where it's like there's no aftermarket for HVAC?
So to answer your question, yes, it is customers like that. We used to go back and fix individuals that had these problems, but I honestly had to put a stop to it because they would call us 2 months later and ask us to go back and fix something else, and then they forgot who installed it because we're the last person there, and then they're blaming us for the install. So it just became a real hornet's nest, so we just decided that if we don't install it, we're not going to go fix it. And we've done that for 2 years now, and it's working well.
Yeah, and I know that Nathan is the same. We were just talking about that, how Nathan just doesn't service equipment anymore. It's all sort of full retrofit electrification system. So I'd love to hear how that works and sort of what that process is like when it's much more online than the sort of kitchen table conversations that are traditional in HVAC.
We, different than Nathan, we don't get a lot of, and I'm not sure if I'm answering this properly, but we don't get a lot of individuals or customers calling us, doing stuff online with us. It's always face-to-face. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Yeah, and then to Nathan, what does that look like for you, where that's sort of the core of your business?
Sure. Is this one working? No. Oh, somebody else's. All right. All right. We're going now. So we've gone a complete digital approach, and the backbone of that is really having a platform built on education. So, you know, I hear all the time, sales guys in the industry. We don't have any sales guys working for us. We call them electrification experts, but their jobs are to guide, educate, and teach consumers and walk them through what the process is. Heat pumps are still, they're a known, but they're an unknown. They're an unknown on how they operate, how they work, how they're supposed to be sized. And I find there's a craving almost in the industry with customers to get that education. And they'll go through traditional methods and have that kitchen table sale, but they're not necessarily getting somebody right now at the door that's sitting there having that conversation that's truly actually educating them on the benefit sides, what's available. To Jamie's point, you know, really listening to the customer and understanding what they're looking to achieve, and be it that in building envelope or, you know, how their house is operating now. Are they looking for smart controls? Are they looking for specialty services, or what that long-term plan is for their house? And that's really what we roped into online. So we built a platform where customers can guide through several different questions, which are really triggered and based on what type of heating system they currently have now, we can give them a few different options at the end, but then they'll speak to one of our electrification specialists. And instead of having a sales guy go out and do that kitchen table sale, we'll do the educational side over the phone or through messaging or through different means, and then we'll send an installer out to actually finalize. So, doing a heat loss, heat gain calculation, running an F280, ensuring that the sizing that we expected over the phone is accurate in person.
I feel like there's a homeowner education piece running through this, and I know that Dale loves homeowner education and asking questions and sort of understanding what the underlying problem is. And I do think that, like, I'm in Ontario, and it is a very different market where many homeowners, when I'm talking to them, are hearing about heat pumps for the first time, or they don't trust them, or they don't know what they are, or they think it's sort of just an environmental solution and not a two-way air conditioner. So, Dale, I'd love to hear the conversations that you're having with homeowners and how you're really just working with them to find the right solution for them.
I think that comes down to trust. I think any solid relationship has to be based on that. So we have our comfort consultations with people. Many people that we consult with, they've had a heat pump before, or maybe someone in their circle, friends or family has had a heat pump. They're coming into the transaction a lot of times quite informed, maybe not entirely accurate, but for the most part, they have an idea of what they want. And so the conversations that we have with the homeowners, they've changed over the years for sure. We enjoy forging that relationship with a homeowner and developing that level of trust where we become a partner. As you've heard from other panelists, you develop that relationship and find out what the solution is. So we've had terms coined over the years, comfort advisor or home energy assessment specialist, or you can think of other ones. And that's really, it sums it up. You need to provide, consider the whole home as a package and provide that solution that addresses. Maybe you can't address every concern, but you consider every concern and every part of that system. If you're going to go in and do a full envelope and heat pump and electrification, maybe that budget's not there or the appetite's not there, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't inform clients. And you may inform them on future decisions, for example, with oil changeouts. So we can start the process, maybe the oil's not coming out right away, but when you can present that as a very viable option, they can budget for that, they can plan for that, they can know what's coming up.
I feel like a big piece of that was building science, right? Because HVAC just fits into the house, but the house itself is existing in real world conditions. So did you, like, to be a competent comfort consultant, how much do you think is just focusing on HVAC and understanding the ins and outs of that system, and how much is understanding the rest of the house that the HVAC system is going to sort of fit into?
They're directly tied together with heat pumps. So when you go into, a lot of our housing stock is, and so we're in rural Nova Scotia, it's Cuomo Comfort Systems, so a lot of our homes are older. They are detached, they have oil and or wood, like a lot of rural Nova Scotia. So you go in and you understand the system as a whole. You want to look at that heat pump as maybe not necessarily the end all of the home, as the 100% solution. And when you look at it and you understand, okay, that envelope, or even with regards to electrification, maybe that's not 100% possible at that time. But insulation is a good place to start. So if we have a foundation and understand insulation and thermodynamics, if we've maybe even studied and done a heat loss course, or at least looked at some literature on that, so let's go into the basement. Has the rim joist been insulated? Is it a rock rubble foundation in the basement? Your spray foam contractor, have you developed a relationship with your spray foam contractor? If you don't have it in-house, understand that system, and you can take that to the homeowner and you can make that recommendation that we can put a heat pump, I want to put a smaller one, and your first stop is going to be to tighten up your structure. Do you want some referrals? Do you want some more information on that? Is that going to lead to a conversation with Efficiency Nova Scotia, or maybe they enter into the HEA stream, or maybe it's into the OPA stream, the moderate income? These are all very viable options for a lot of our homeowners. So it's back to that consultation and information, but to your question, we need to really develop our knowledge and our skills as an HVAC consultant, because everything in the host system presses on the size of that system. We need to design a system to as small as possible. So observe those NRCan guidances that have us looking at a system that's going to hit about 80%. I like that approach. It's not a one-all solution, but I think that approach a lot of times can save on equipment cost, sizing, on complications with electrification, and think about our global challenges. So the resources that go into this equipment. When you turn out 100,000 units in a year as a manufacturer, and you can save 2% on your steel usage and costs, that is substantial. That's a lot of smelting, that's a lot of coal. So we have a huge influence on what happens globally with climate, and that just filters right down in so many ways to our homeowners that we develop this level of trust with.
Yeah, the sizing piece is so important. I know that Nathan loves the F280. I love energy usage, so just looking at past gas bills and sizing based on that. But I think a lot of this comes down to getting right-sized HVAC, which in most houses means right-sized heat pumps. And you really need to be aggressive on the sizing to get that. This goes back to sort of the house as a system concept to me, which is actually developed in Canada by NRCan a long time ago. But I find it so interesting that Greenfoot is doing all of those steps together. Like Dale, you're talking about doing accurate heat load calculations and getting the right system for the job, and how does that fit into the house. And I can imagine that homeowners are easily overwhelmed with that, and I can imagine they're also confused because they haven't seen a lot of times when homeowners go to a contractor, if they go to an HVAC contractor, they expect to get sold HVAC. If they go to a window contractor, the solution is going to be windows. But I feel like when they go to Greenfoot, it could be any of those things. So how do you have those conversations with homeowners without overwhelming them and sort of managing their confusion on that?
That's a great question. You know, I think back, I started in this trade in 1985. I put my first heat pump in. And I think back then, you know, we were selling heat pumps to people that never heard tell of the word heat pump, let alone how they worked or how efficient they were. Today, I think we're fortunate to be living in a time when we have technology that can deliver that message to them, even without us. And right or wrong, some of the information may not be right, but at the end of the day, homeowners are a lot more educated today than they ever were before. So it does help our job. It makes our job a little easier in entering the home. Homeowners, you know, being educated on most things, from heat pumps to insulation to hot water heat pumps and the sort, it certainly makes our job easier, but it can be overwhelming for a homeowner to try to understand whether it pays for them to put their finances into insulating the basement and attic rather than putting a heat pump system in. It can significantly reduce their operating costs. It can reduce the system size. So, you know, you put a heat pump in first and then you insulate later. Sometimes you can have an oversized heat pump. So, you know, therein lies the challenge. So insulation, windows, you know, doors and the sort are very important, I think, first steps for a lot of these homeowners.
Yeah, and Jamie, earlier you were talking about essentially the race to the bottom, contractors that aren't thinking about any of this stuff. And I think a big part of this is handling homeowner expectations for what they think is going to happen, what they think they need, how much they think it's going to cost before they go into that. So, like, what's been, like, I guess from homeowners and contractors, what are you hearing about how heat pumps fit into this? How can we use heat pumps to make happy homeowners?
Yeah, I believe the biggest thing is the number one thing a homeowner wants is to be comfortable. I know price or the monthly cost is very important, and that's going to be a huge part of the decision. But they also want a solution that makes them comfortable and fixes the problem for them or makes things better for them. One of the things, all of us being in this industry, you're kind of an expert to everybody that's not. So being involved in kids' sports, parents will come to me and say, hey, I got this problem. I still remember, it stands out to me. These parents came up to me and said, I got a heat pump system. And I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah, we don't like it. It doesn't work the way it should. And I was like, well, what's wrong? Well, our rec room is so cold and our kitchen was so hot with all the windows and we can't heat and cool at the same time because of this system. It just won't work that way. They told us we need a commercial one. And I was like, oh, wow, like a single zone in the rec room, multi in the kitchen and upstairs in the bedrooms that would have gave them what they wanted. But obviously, the contractor in that case didn't really have a conversation with them to understand this is what we're dealing with, this is what is frustrating us. And that's frustrating because then you have that homeowner telling other people, I got this heat pump solution, but it didn't really work well. So I think that's the biggest thing is homeowners do want to be comfortable. It was said earlier, they want to be educated. They want to understand how it works and what is going on. I think for the contractors that sometimes will complain to me, I had one that's not on the stage. It's a different contractor, and the salesperson said to me, I never sell a multi. I don't like selling multis. And I was like, wow, like why don't you sell a multi?
But what if it's the right option?
That's right. And their answer was, there's too many callbacks. They put that thing in conflict. They don't understand. And to me, again, that's a frustration that's out of not educating about how it works. And I think that's the part that gets missed sometimes. Like Joe said, Nathan, there's going to be that contractor that's working out of the back of their truck and maybe they're not selling at the right price or the value, and you're going to lose sales to that type of contractor. But at the end of the day, the homeowner makes that choice. They're not going to be happy because they're not going to get the same experience. There's value in what a good contractor does, and they shouldn't be scared to charge for it. You'll lose some sales, but you'll gain others, and then word of mouth. When someone has a good experience, that's where they're going. My neighbor's happy, I'm going there too.
I love the, I didn't train them how to use it, and they keep using it wrong, so we don't sell them anymore. Yeah, and the other thing that I think needs to be said about the sort of solving problems, doing bigger projects, and doing high-quality work on it is it can actually lead to bigger ticket items, like more profitable jobs, and you can sort of slow down and do better work and make more money off of fewer jobs rather than the trunk slammer run around and just hope that your accountant at the end of the year tells you that you made money that year. And this is all very in-person stuff. So like Nathan, for yours, do you find the same thing? Do you find that when homeowners reach out to you, is it about comfort? Are they just chasing dollar savings? Is it emissions? Like, what's the buying factor that you most frequently hear from homeowners?
I think it's a healthy mixture, and that's really what you're discovering within that first conversation. If you is it? Are we working now? I said it's sorry, we're almost done here, so we're going to figure out how to use a mic before the end of the day. I think it's a healthy mixture. And during that discovery phase when we're having a conversation with a customer, we can usually guide that conversation to understand what those motivations are. You're going to have customers on the marketplace that are looking for just grant-based stuff. You know, they're removing oil. You're going to have customers that are looking for environmental impact or how it works, or you're going to have just pure curiosity. You know, they had an existing system. They see everything on the news. Everybody keeps talking about heat pumps, and they want to know how they work. And a substantial amount of people, and we get it online as an e-commerce company. We're pretty good at getting all the feedback, good or bad. We can learn that really quickly when we put on a social post, whether or not somebody in that area does not believe heat pumps work, because they're very happy to tell us online. So we have to run a lot of educational side, making customers understand, or at least getting the information out there before they can have it. But I can't say I could pinpoint one specific reasoning to purchase. I think every customer is individually special in what they're looking to do. Grants definitely gear a lot of that motivation depending on the type of product and where it is. But there seems to be just a natural inclination towards heat pumps right now, and there's multiple different reasons customers are going there. There's always cost savings, there is environmental impacts, there is just, you know, get with the Jones. We'll use an old sales word, where, you know, everybody's doing it, so they're interested to understand why they should. And I think if you have the right conversations with the customer, it's pretty easy to understand what those motivations are.
Yeah, and it wasn't a trick question, but I think that is the right answer. I think it's like, it depends on the homeowner. It depends what they value. It depends what they need. And when we're talking about electrification beyond East Coast, it's also that emission savings and energy costs and all of that changes in every province, changes in every area, and it changes over time as well. So it's hard to sell stuff if you're just trying to be the cheapest and just trying to get dollar savings. I think that's also a good answer to the keeping up with the Joneses piece is part of the question that we had, I think on the last panel or 2 panels ago, about what's happening in Europe versus what's happening here. It's like, that's definitely happening in Europe, where they see their neighbors have it, they hear that their neighbors got one and that they trust them and that they didn't have a terrible experience with one for comfort-wise. And you look like you have something to say.
One of the frustrating things that I see is the contractor that only sells a ductless heat pump, regardless of what the home requires or what the home should have. And too many times I've walked into a house with a perfectly good designed duct system, and they got 2 or 3 heat pumps around the house. And that was because of the lack of education of that particular contractor, not understanding how to put a central system in.
Yeah, it's a bit like an Oprah thing where it's you get a ductless heat
Yeah.
pump and you get a ductless heat pump. Look under your chair, you all got a
Right.
ductless heat pump.
Right. So, I mean, I can't stress the importance for the contractors that are scared to dive into the central world to get more educated. HRAI have some great ductwork design courses. Take them, learn it. It's vital for our industry, and you'll be better for it, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I completely agree there. Yeah, Nathan?
I think it'd be pressed to say, just for Michael Rither, if he's in the room, doesn't let me live this down, but to your point, you know, air to water systems. Yeah. When we're walking in and we're watching houses with boilers being... Well, we were having this conversation yesterday where you walk into a house right now that has a complete hydronic system in that home, and we're ripping that out to put in mini splits and baseboard heaters because we have either not the knowledge on air to water systems, or we're not pushing that forward. So we see it on the ducted side with the mini splits, but we see it more so than not on the boiler systems, particularly in the East Coast. So Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, where people have, again, perfectly good hydronic systems, that we're removing the main components to put in multi-zones because that's what's easier. And it's also the most understood. We see it on rebate programs not being accepted, not having boiler systems and air to water even being part of the programs. The first thing a contractor's going to is, what can I get this customer that's going to get me some money back? So we're missing the boat on a few different types of systems that are available on the market that we should be pushing forward, and we don't see it.
Yeah, and I think with mini splits like ductless systems, homeowners have a better understanding that they do cooling. And when we talk about central ducted systems, more and more, I'm always surprised by this, but I always hear from homeowners that even after they got it, they're surprised that it does cooling. They're like, oh, I thought it was just efficient heating. It does cooling too. It's like, that probably should have been in that person's sales process. Probably could have sold a better system or a different, like, clearly this wasn't as thorough as it should have been. I'd love to hear from you, Dale, just about what we were just talking about with different systems the different systems that you see, and where you think contractors fall short with the everybody gets a ductless heat pump system.
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, I'll touch on some of Nathan's ideas. So I've been looking at air to water for probably about 18 months. We want to offer it as a product. We want to do it well. We're not hydronic engineers. We recognize that. So we're back to the education piece. How can we upskill to get the training for that, the engineering guidance, understanding how a hydronic system works? Back to the spray foam partner, do you have a hydronic partner? Are they willing to come on board? If you're going to sub out your work, so we would sub electrical, hydronics, we'd sub our sheet metal, but we want to use the same partners all the time. So then it's that communication with the customer. The end goal is customer satisfaction and an excellent solution for the customer. So we have that conversation with the sub and see what their knowledge level is. Are they willing to commit to upskilling so that we can work as a team to put in that air to water system? Who's your distributor and what do they offer? Are you willing to put that product, assign your name to it, and put it forward as a solution and commit to the training? So that's where my head is with air to water. I would love to be rolling it out. We've specified it. Don't go out there and say to someone, oh, you can do air to water, but it's going to be so expensive. You never want to do that. Let the customer decide. You have no idea what's under their mattress or what their uncle just left them in a will. So give them the options, educate them. If that is the best course forward, if you've got that hydronic system, understand the emitters. Okay, so they're not really made for cast iron, but what will they do with cast iron? And if you get Greenfoot in to do your basement spray foam, all of a sudden your hydronic system with cast iron, maybe you need to put a high wall in the living room and you've got an air to water hydronic system with a fan coil, and you're laughing, you've got the best of both worlds. So that's my take on that. Anything else specifically that you had in mind?
But I hope that you get a referral fee from Kent when you kick that spray foam job over him. Whenever I see his cars going by, which is all the time, I often call the office and say that the driver's speed so that they'll get... You find the number at the back, it's how's my driving? Yeah.
Don't worry, we know when they're speeding.
Yeah, there's cars out there numbered up to almost like 999 now, so it's like, oh my God, when are you guys going to stop?
We've only just begun to
I know
fight.
that. You guys are impressive.
Joe, I'd love to hear from you about bad heat pump installations, not sort of for the opposite reason of you only do great ones. You only use Red Seal contractors, I believe, Red Seal technicians. So I'd love to hear what goes wrong for homeowners when it's bad heat pump installations.
Well, we don't use just Red Seal. We have 12 Red Seals and 11 apprentices, so they work together in tandem, of course. But we're very fortunate. There's one thing I can guarantee you. I can't guarantee you much, but I can guarantee you one thing. I'm the least most educated person in this room, in this field, because I spent 40 years in the food business and retired, and then got back in the business because I was bored. So we've owned Conroy's now 5 years, and John Conroy did a magnificent job of building a great company. And he was 70%, and I will get to your question, he was 70% commercial, 30% heat pumps. So me being not that bright, I decided to flip that on its head and was complete opposite. 70% heat pumps, 30% commercial. And it helped the cash flow, but it sure did not help the EBIT by any means when you got Red Seals installing heat pumps. So we got that right up now back to where it should be, which we're very fortunate. But we just don't focus on heat pumps. We do a fair amount of geothermal. We do ducted systems. We do 40 plus of those a year. We do 30 plus water furnaces a year. But we really focus on high-end homes. And believe it or not, there's quite a few of those in Pictou County. And that's where I live. So I'm very, very blessed to have some great connections As people know, I have over 11,000 contacts on my iPhone. So I built my whole life because I believe your life is about connections. And if you're good at connections, you will do well in business. And our heat pump installers do a fantastic job. And on these high-end homes, we don't quote them. We tell them we have to do time and material because you can't quote something that when you got a customer building an $8 million house and they try to change the jet engine while the jet's in the air, you can't quote something like that. It's impossible. So we're very blessed to have that luxury. And we've done homes from a low of 260 to a high of, we just finished one a couple months ago. It was 15 months, 720,000 for the heating, HVAC, cooling system, and everything, dryer vents, everything that goes with that. But it's very simple with anything in business. You surround yourself by good people, and I've done that my whole life. And those good people will make sure your bottom line is good. It's not rocket science. And like when a customer calls, our employees know, because I tell them all the time, if a customer calls, when they say jump, when you're in the air, ask them how high. Because one of the customers we have now that we're very grateful to have is Efficiency Nova Scotia. And we literally bend over backwards for them every month. And we always will, because to me it's a gift that keeps giving. And it's guaranteed work. When I was in the food business, you're only guaranteed that customer for a week, because if the competition's ad was better the next week, they're gone there. So it's very nice to have customers that keep coming back to you. And we take pride in what we do.
When you say you have customers come back to you, is that, like, it sounded like your favorite projects are the big new build custom homes. Is that the builders keep coming back to you for other new?
No, they're children.
Generational
We got 3 in the hopper right now, and we've done all their parents' homes. And now we're doing the children. And they don't even ask for a quote, because they know we're going to treat them properly. But they know that they're going to get 100% quality work. Our business model's different, right? Like it is different, it is.
That's why we're here. That's why I want to hear about it. So do a lot of your jobs come from those types of referrals, whether it's kids or friends, or you just do great work? And how much of your future business comes from sort of buzz marketing, direct referrals, and how much are you getting new, fresh customers?
I'm going to say that referrals is probably 40% of our business. New, fresh customers would be another 30. And the rest, of course, is, from advertising and out there pounding the street and so on.
And I think you're definitely on the on the spectrum from trunk slammers to high quality custom built giant projects. You're definitely leaning on that side of things. Do you think that other smaller contractors that aren't established and have those relationships, do you think that higher quality, slower, bigger jobs is sort of a viable path for other contractors to copy?
Of course it is. Anybody can do anything, as you know. But when you think you're the smartest person in the room, it's time for you to leave the room. And I have 3 adult children and 5 grandchildren. And, one of my adult children, she thinks she's the smartest person in the room, and I tell her all the time, you're not. So it is a problem we have today with the younger generation. And I'm not sitting up here being an old geezer saying that, but it is a serious problem we have with the younger generation. And with our staff, I have Red Seals that are 58 years old, and I have Red Seals that are 22 years old. And those 22-year-olds are so mature, and you don't micromanage these kids today. When I was in the food business in the 80s, we used to get paid to be mean to people. That don't work today. That does not work today with young people. You got to nurture them along, treat them properly. educate them, give them the training, and my favorite saying is, you kill them with kindness, you get it back tenfold. And I believe that truly.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it follows the same track of high quality work and trying to deliver that. I'm just curious from Nathan, just in terms of like a large part of Joe's business is getting those referrals from other companies or repeat customers. And I think you said one click, you don't get a lot of repeat work. It's a lot of one-off. I think you probably still get referrals, but it's less generational $700,000 projects.
Sure. So first, we don't actually get into the new construction space at all. When we kind of decided what we were going to do as a business, it was put on some blinders, and we wanted to be the best at electrification, and that was in the retrofit space and the retrofit market. Referrals, though, that makes up a substantial part of our business. I think if your focus is to do that best work and ensure that you're doing things right, customers will always come to you. And I'll use Newfoundland as an example. We see one last name in Newfoundland, and suddenly we see 300 of them. Right? If anybody's ever done any work at Newfoundland, there's a lot of generational families there, and we'll have the same name and come across the desk 100 times very quickly. So, making sure that you're doing right by the customer, making sure those systems are going in, you're not getting those nuisance calls because you're sizing that equipment correctly, you're doing things right from the beginning to the end, you're always going to get referral business. If you're not getting referral business, you got to really look at what your platform is. How are you operating? How are you treating the customer? How are you treating the installation side? I think in our business, for instance, and we're completely e-commerce, so we attract customers online, be it social media, web, Google, or whatever method you think. Even our business, we're about 30% of referral business now across Canada. And that's allowed us to operate in all 5 provinces now, is a lot of that referral side and creating a name for ourselves on quality.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, was the 5 provinces. Most HVAC contractors are local. Most HVAC owners sort of have a direct handle on their team. I think you are pushing more into the digital age, right? And so how does that work for one click? How are you able to keep that quality up when it is sort of spread across the country?
I think it's twofold. One, we discovered a few years ago that we needed our own trucks. I know I get asked a lot of questions from anybody that's known me for the last several years, and when we first started, it was this Uber model, and we did verification through mobile applications, so our technicians will take pictures. We can use AI technologies and different visual aids to be able to verify things are done correctly. However, we realized about 2.5 years ago that nobody was ever really going to care more than we were when it came to our customers. So since that time, we've opened 5 locations across the country. We have another 3 opening now, where we have put a substantial amount of trucks and electricians on the road. I think we're about 50 to 60 trucks right now across Canada. And a big component of that was still following the same thing we did with the subcontractor network, and it's verification. As a technology-focused company, and I'll be the first to say I'm not a mechanical. Don't ever get me to install anything myself. I'm really good with a keyboard.
I don't even own a Phillips screwdriver.
Me and you both. My background is computer programming and marketing. So my focus was always on that component of it and looking at different software solutions to be able to do those verifications, verifying quality control, verifying on sizing based on actual data, not, you get to that house, you put up your cardboard box and you say, okay, is it a 2-ton, 3-ton, or 4-ton? But actually getting the data on the house, the insulation, the building envelope, running a proper heat loss, heat gain, running a proper F280 calculation. You can verify a lot even if you're not in that city based on the data you're collecting. And then how you're analyzing that data can make it that next step.
Yeah, I love the idea of just using real performance data, real metrics of the house, whether that is still energy modeling or whether that's energy usage. It's like that house exists in the real world. It performs under real world conditions. And so how can we use that to better size HVAC for houses?
We don't use the same as you when it comes to the gas side, but what we will use is existing electrical data. And that's allowed us, even without the use of load management, but actually be able now to mitigate load changes. So Being able to analyze, a year worth of electrical data on a customer's home, we can show whether or not what that peak demand is and whether or not we even need those panel swaps and so on. One of the things I talked about a little bit this morning as well that I think we're missing in the industry is that knowledge set. Most guys have got in as the mechanical refrigeration, but having that electrical knowledge and understanding how to do proper load calculations on that. We see it time and time again. I think I was just having a conversation actually right before this started with somebody and talking about when they're going into houses right now, every house needs a panel change. And it's because, most guys are just hiring a local electrician to go on, and are we actually running load calculations? Are we looking at the peak demand? Are we looking at what the actual usage has been? So there's a lot of information you can get from utility. I got to learn your way of doing things, but I've gotten pretty good at the F280 so far.
I mean, it's certainly easier with gas when it's just that gas was for heating and hot water, and that was it. It's definitely easier to sort of segregate those different uses. The talk about panels also reminds me, there was a study in Purdue University where they have this test house, and it had a 100 amp panel, and they were doing like smart controls, load management controls on it, and they were able to fully electrify the house on a 100 amp panel, and it had a 4-ton heat pump, and I think it was an 18 kilowatt backup heat strip. It was an 80 amp breaker on it, and a resistance electric water heater, and like a slow charger EV on it. And the result of their study was that they discovered that they could add a level 2 EV charger on top of it to make it work. Like, I think there's all of this smart controls coming that help avoid the load sharing, the load shifting, all of that.
In Ottawa, we have deep energy retrofits now on 100 amp service where we've done fully electrified. So air to heat pump, water heater, ERV system being installed, EV, full heat pump with backup systems using load controls and management to manage that out. But we will not do service upgrades now in Ontario unless it's absolutely necessary. And necessary for us is we walk in and it's a fuse box.
Yeah.
If I got a breaker box and it's 100 amp service, there is controls available to mitigate that additional
Or they have
cost to a
an
homeowner.
electric hot tub and the electric pool heater out back and all these atypical loads.
If you look at recovery rates on a water heater, right, can you put a load manager between that and your EV? Do you need to be heating that hot water tank at all times? Or can you allow that to go for an hour without it actually operating? So there's a multiple different facets you can use on load management and understanding how each control in the house operates and then what can you add to it. But load managers, for instance, you can put 3 or 4 in the same house. It's between devices. It's not necessarily just on that one panel, right? So
it's EV and the dryer. We only have a few minutes left. I really want to get to this question for Dale, which was just your advice for contractors looking to make residential heat pumps a bigger part of their business. I know that that's a very open-ended question, so do with it what you'd like.
Well, it is open-ended, but I really don't see it that way because there's one path really. It's back to that trust. It's back to the relationship. So making residential heat pumps a bigger part of your business, my advice, there's some key differences. So when we're talking about making that a bigger part of your difference, so let's consider, okay, well, you're doing light commercial or commercial now. So that's the difference. That's the slant, right? So getting more into the residential sector, your client is put first, so you put yourself in their place. So you walk into an environment in a residential setting, and you're walking into their home. You are touching their space. That's their place. That environment has a soul. You need to respect that. It's a place that someone holds precious, regardless of the state of it, whether it's the $3 million house, or they're qualifying for efficiencies, top level, low income updates, and they have nothing. That is their space, right? So you create a vulnerability when you let someone into your space. And if you're a confident person, you might not understand that. But I think most of us have felt vulnerable at one point in our lives. So you invite that stranger, that comfort advisor into your home, and you can have some funky reactions from our customers. So do we say, oh, they're just a trouble client or they're weird? Well, respect that dynamic, that there's a stranger in their house, you might get a different reaction. Sometimes they're really strong reactions to us. So back to the commercial comparison. So think about if you've worked in the commercial sphere, the reactions you'd get from a commercial supermarket manager or the owner of a restaurant, as we're trying to be a provider for those individuals. We get some reactions sometimes that are different, or they're relationships that are hard to manage. So is that any different? It really is. You know, those customers that we work with in those spheres, do they take ownership of that product, of that store, of that restaurant? If it's the owner of the entity, then absolutely, that touches a similar vein for that individual. But if it's not, if it's a manager, then no, they may just be able to wash their hands of it. The point is the emotional quotient is not present there. So they may give it to you. If you don't get it right, you may hear, it might not be nice, but you blow their budget, but it's not the same relationship. So bottom line is, those relationships, you need to commit to forging them. If you want to get deeper into the residential sector and be responsible, as we've heard from our panelists, I think we all are like-minded there. You forge those relationships, who you are, what you say, doing what you say you will do. You build that trust. You become that agent. You become that partner. And that's what you're committing to. If you think, oh, let's get into residential, it's not something to touch into for a year and you ruin your reputation, and because that'll follow you. And that's not the right thing to do. You're talking about homeowners here, people that really are vulnerable to trusting us and bringing our skills and everything that we can do to make their lives better. That's the position we're in. And when we leave them, we want them to feel that they've made the absolute best decision with their home and with their finances because of the assistance that we've provided to them.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to leave it, both because it was a great answer and also because we're out of time. And I think the big idea that I'd like to leave with everyone is just that heat pumps are an opportunity for contractors to solve problems that actually matter to homeowners. And I think that's one of the through lines from the panel, is that one of the great things is that there are different paths to do that. Like we have contractors that are diversifying between residential and commercial. You're adding other trades to it. You're leveraging building science and focusing on comfort. You're sort of moving more online and sort of building a more modern business. And so I think that's the big takeaway from this. And as much as I want heat pumps to succeed and I want electrification and the energy transition, I think that those things only happen if the homeowners are getting good experiences from heat pumps, and the way that we are installing them, the way that we're pitching them is working within contractor business models. Like contractors are happy to do it and we don't have to force each one to do that. So that's where I'll leave it. I'll just do one shout out for the HRAI Heat Pump Champions list, because I think that's a very important, easy step that every contractor here could do, would just be to join that list. And I think that helps homeowners find good contractors, and it also helps contractors signal that they do stand for quality and stand for sort of this big picture that we're all trying to build together. Thanks.
Thank you.